I call the meeting of the San Juan Unified School District Board of Education to order. The meeting is being audio and video recorded, and the recording may capture sounds and images of those attending this meeting. The recording will be posted on the district website. Good afternoon and welcome. I am Michael McKibben, Board President. To my right is Ms. Zima Creason, Board Vice President. To her right is Ms. Pam Costa, Board Clerk. To her right is Mr. Saul Hernandez, and Ms. Villasquez will be coming in a few minutes. To my left is Superintendent Kern, and to his left is Board Administrative Assistant Stephanie Cunningham. This afternoon, we will start with a workshop regarding the governance transition to 7 board members. Superintendent Kern.
Thank you, President McKibben, members of the board, staff, and community members. As Dr. McKibben stated, we are going to be having a workshop today on the transition from 5 members to 7, which will take place this November when the election happens. And tonight, Trent Allen is going to be kind of moderating and leading us through a discussion. And so, Trent, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Superintendent Kern, President McKibben, members of the board. We're excited to have this conversation with you this afternoon. And this is really an opportunity to explore our board members' thinking on how we operationalize this move from 5 to 7 board members, both on the impacts it will have on our logistics and the mechanics of the district, as well as the board's operation itself. So before we get going this afternoon, I do want to share with you that we're going to be throwing out some ideas from conversations we've heard in other places, from things we've seen in other districts. So just because we say something does not mean it's a staff recommendation today. We're really trying to generate some conversation and some dialogue. So please take it in that context. We really want to explore your thinking so that we can come back with the best practices to meet the needs moving forward. And if I could have the PowerPoint, there we go. So on our workshop today, the other thing I do want to stress is that this is not an action item. So our purpose is just to have that discussion, to hear your interests, so that we can come back at a later time with recommended changes to the board governance handbook, as well as any board policies or administrative regulations that might need to be modified to meet your interests as we make that transition from 5 to 7. The other thing I wanted to stress is that nothing is set in stone. So as we have this conversation today, this is just allows staff to start that preparation work so that when we hit that transition point, we can hit the ground running. Does not mean that things cannot change in the future. So as boards continue to evolve and boards continue to change with new members, that will be a continuing conversation that we will always have. So nothing we decide on today or in the future is set in stone. We can always come back and have those conversations and work through those changes if it needs to be changed to meet the needs of the board or our community. So today I'm going to break our conversation into kind of 2 big topical areas. The first is going to look at how we represent voice and how we represent trustee areas while serving the entire district. And our second area that we'll look at is kind of more the logistics and mechanics of meetings and some of those things that we do in the district and how we will operationalize those pieces. The format of our workshop today is also going to be a little bit different than what we usually do at a board meeting business item or even some of our workshops. So as I go through today's presentation, we'll actually be stopping throughout the presentation to have dialogue and discussion. So we won't go all the way through the presentation and then ask for discussion. We'll go topic by topic and then ask for some conversation and discussion from board members as we go by topic. So again, our first area that we're going to talk about is that idea of representing a specific area while serving the entire district. And our first section of topics and wonderings really looks at how historically in San Juan, we've really engaged all board members at all events. So because board members represent the entire district, they're elected by the entire district. When we have events, everybody's invited. Everybody can pick representation for committees from the entire district. So it really has a very broad feel to it. So as we make that transition, we really want to look at how we will engage both on the micro and the macro levels in that representation topic. So I'm going to start us off with something that will hopefully be a little bit easier of a conversation. And some of these conversations today are going to be very practical, and some of these are going to be a little more theoretical. we're eager to have any thoughts you might have, but there's two areas I'm going to start us off with just to talk about some protocols and practices. The first is around invitations to events. So one of the questions we would have is, should schools and programs invite all of the board members to their events throughout the entire district? Or should they really focus on inviting the trustee who serves their area to their events? Secondly, when a board member is going to go to an event within the district, would it be the board's expectation that they RSVP for that event and that other board members are notified of that event? So if you have an event going on in your trustee area and another board member is going to go to a school event in your area, would you want to be alerted that another board member is attending that event in your area? And I'm going to pause there for conversations or any additional comment that Superintendent Kern might want to add to that topic.
Okay, if you want to comment on anything, just turn on your mic and we will recognize you. We're not going to go in any particular order tonight. Just I will be watching for the green light on your.
Thank you for that. My gut feeling, I know this is a discussion, is I think that all of us should be continue to be invited to all events because we do represent the full district and we do have relationships throughout the district. So I like the idea of all of us being invited to everything. Regarding notice, I mean, it'd be nice to know if there's another board member attending an event in our area, but if we're all getting the invite, then we all have the opportunity and we recognize that, you know, another board member may attend in our area. So if the invite includes everybody, then I don't see a need for letting folks know who's going to show up.
Even now, when one person RSVPs for an event, Ms. Cunningham lets us know that who's coming to an event, so we know at this point in time. I don't think that would change at all. I agree with you. I would like to be invited. I would like to be able to visit any school that I want to and follow the same protocol we have right now, that we talk with the principal to let the principal know we're coming. We let Ms. Cunningham know that we're going to the site. And I think that'll be especially important if we're looking at an issue involving a school and it's on a board agenda, to be able to, if we need to visit the school, to have an understanding of it. And it's not in our area, it still would be useful to have a clear understanding of what the discussion is about.
Thank you. I agree. I know that the district has our name in each individual district, but I still would love us to have the mindset that it's not my district, but our district. And so I would love us to continue to be invited and to be able to treat this as a district as a whole, you know. And I agree, I understand the theory that, oh, that's the only high school I have, so I maybe want to pay more attention to that or whatever, but in theory, I would hope that we continue to have this our district mentality. That's my opinion anyway.
Yeah, I absolutely what I was going to say. The most important thing I do want to emphasize is making sure that Ms. Cunningham or the administrative assistant knows our whereabouts and that sort of thing, and we continue to do that practice the way we do it now.
Yeah, and I appreciate that response from each of you, because I think that is important to really show our community that we're still involved in all areas. Because we know that the majority of the issues that come to the board around the entire district. And so I think if we're isolated to our region and just to our constituents, it's going to be hard to make a decision that supports the needs of the whole district. You know, even when we think about specific decisions related to, let's say it's Title I, or even if we had a report on Title I. Well, we have the majority of our Title I schools that might be in a certain area, and there could be another area that really don't have any of those. We want to make sure that the board still has that interest of all the schools. And that's just one example of an issue that may not affect all those regions equally. So appreciate that, just the conversation from the board. Trent, Linda, any follow-up on that?
No. I will move us on to our next topic. which is going to be, the rest in this section are actually all going to be on representation and specifically kind of around voice. So specific to student board reports. Right now, as you know, we rotate through our high schools so that we ensure we hear from each of our high schools throughout the year at the board level. As we transition to those trustee areas, one of the opportunities it does present is to potentially invite board members to act as liaisons with those high schools and those student representatives from those high schools to interact on outside the board meetings. So on a more informal stage, meet with them more frequently and engage with them in slightly different ways. So as you ponder that idea and that concept, consider that our structure right now is very formal. That gives an informal way to interact with students. Really, what opportunities do you see for us to create sharing informal student voice as we make this transition to having 7 board members? And what role do you see student voice playing in informing your role as a board member?
And I can speak a little bit more to this as well. I just had my SSAC again yesterday, and it's allowed me to build a much different relationship with a group of students than just seeing them present at the board. And I think there's an opportunity to build a relationship with students when we talk about student voice, potentially with those, really getting to know those student representatives in your area. Because what we've all learned is that students want to be more of an advocate than they ever have. You know, I've even had now Melissa and Kristen join me in those, and next time I think we're having some other guests based on the conversation that they have. And I think they have a desire to the students do to have a more direct connection directly with someone. So that's just part of the conversation that came up, really generated by
I want to make sure I'm understanding correctly. So I love the idea of having meetings with student representatives outside of the boardroom. I think that's a great idea, but I'm making sure I'm understanding correctly. That's not instead of formal board reports. This would be
in
as well
addition to-
as?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, our students would still present here. It's just an opportunity to connect and build a relationship with those students that would potentially be in your area at a whole nother level than we currently have. They would, it's much like my students come directly to me and email me directly about things. You know, I call them by the first name, they call me by my first name. And we've just built that kind of relationship. And so I see a similar opportunity around this with connecting with students on a level that we really haven't to this point.
I think it's a great idea as long as we're not getting rid of the formal board reports, because I think that has great importance too. I think my only concern is because I built relationships with student groups as well, and not all of them are in my trustee area. So I'd also want to be mindful that we're not excluding relationships with other students that aren't in our trustee areas, that we're just kind of siloed. Wouldn't want to see that.
Agreed. And we wouldn't stop that. I mean, you'd still have an opportunity to support students. I think when I even have interactions with members of the board, they have a desire to connect with students, and sometimes maybe they're not getting reached out to as much. So I think there's an opportunity to just build that. Students are going to go to whomever they want to. But again, it's just another touch point with the board directly to our students.
Can I do a follow-up? As you were speaking, it made me think of a situation that may arise and what the expectation would be. Like, for example, if there's a student group at Bella, that's a good example that I've been talking to, do I need to provide notice then to Dr. McCabe, and I apologize, anytime I'm, having these off meetings with students in their area? And not that I would want to be secretive, but at the same time, it might be just kind of awkward, to throw you into a conversation. I don't know. What does that look like?
That's I think the question for the rest of the board.
From my perspective, I would think you would want to let Dr. McKibben know if you were meeting with students at a school that's in his area, but that just makes sense to me as a matter of of respect for the board member in that trustee area so that they're not caught off guard. But I don't think that stops you from talking to the students. I just think it's a point of respect.
I would be more interested in the after effect that Zima, if you went to Del Campo, for example, for whatever, and they're, to let me know, to me, I really don't care, but more so, hey, Saul, I went to Del Campo and this was discussed. And I just want to let you know, because the issue may be, I guess I'm saying is, I'm more concerned about the after report if I need to be aware, so I may get involved or help you get involved or whatever, or help us get involved. But that's the only thing for me. I'd be more concerned about it versus you going, my opinion.
Mike? I think it's probably more important that Ms. Cunningham knows, because she can coordinate, and that's the thing. And I agree with Mr. Hernandez's notion is if there's something after the fact that you think that the board member from a particular region needs to know, I think that they would do that. But, and aside from that, I see this as a particular opportunity and opening to be more connected with various groups around the pack. I think of, for example, Pride Pack. And connecting, that would be something that all of us, I think, might well be interested in. And it doesn't represent a particular region and that sort of thing, but still do that through Ms. Cunningham and so forth. But there are a number of groups like that I think that we can do, that at least I can do a better job of connecting with than I have in the past. And I think this gives us an opportunity to renew our connections with groups like that. One, okay.
So I think you just said something that may bring comfort is if we work through, and Stephanie, Ms. Cunningham, I apologize. I try to work through Ms. Cunningham for all of my scheduling, but sometimes it just doesn't happen and I'll throw things on my calendar, but that seems like a solution right there because we all get the board calendar so everyone knows what we're doing. That might meet the need, right?
Mr. Hernandez.
Question for Mr. Kern. When you meet with your high school group individually, do they go back and report to their high school? How do they go back, report?
It depends the issue that really they're working through. I'll give you a good example. Right now, we're having discussions around the dress code. And they created a survey, and so they were working with their student groups at their schools. They had over 4,000 students respond to the survey that they put out, which is tremendous. But they're not directly, one of the things we avoided was we don't necessarily want someone who's involved in student body. And that was their decision, because remember, the entire SSAC, they pick who's on it every year. They see the applications, they make the choices. They're really looking for that diversity of representation and how you've been involved in your schools. So that isn't a direct go back and respond. Sometimes what they actually end up doing is they go back and they're working with their administration on something based on conversations that we've had. And that's usually, I'm like, okay, you got this issue. We were talking yesterday about vaping as well. One of the students brought that up at the end, and just the challenges that they're seeing around that. So, we had a good conversation. And often in those conversations will end up in meetings with Kristen and her administrative team as well. But there's no formal response that they go back.
Mr. Allen, I guess.
Moving along. Our next area is around board-appointed committees. So when we talk about this item, think curriculum and standards in our facilities committee. So keep in mind that right now each board member appoints 2 members of our community to those committees. So as we grow by 2 board members, that means we are growing those committees by 4 new members. So that's a good proportion of those committees as far as their size goes. So that dynamic on those committees is likely to change and to grow as well. So the first question we have for conversation is really around appointing those members. As you look to the future, would you be looking to appoint members from your trustee areas? Or would you be wanting to look to residents from the entire district to appoint to those committees? I'm going to pause there on that question for discussion.
And one of the things that I could expand on, we could share with the board, because Ms. Bassnelli provided it to me not too long ago, actually where the members of these committees currently are. And so the question is, do we have equal representation throughout the district? So that's part of this conversation of selection of committee members. So we'll open it up to the board.
Good afternoon, colleagues. Oh, thank you, Dr. McKibben. I think on this item, I mean, equal representation across the board is important, but I want to note, I mean, even in some of our existing committees, like recruitment's been a challenge, and I think that is a result of kind of a number of things. Both, look, they take a lot of work. Like they take time to devote to, and so I acknowledge that, and I'm always appreciative of all the hard work that goes into our community members for these committees. I think equal representation across the district should be a priority, and therefore I think kind of keeping it proportional, that being the membership of the committee to the number of kind of board members with that appointment function is likely the best way to keep that in check and continuing that. I just wonder if in conjunction with that, we could do more consistent kind of recruitment, and I don't know whether it's on an annual basis or every other annual, or every other year or something like that, to kind of have a pool of folks ready to go. I know that creates some logistical challenges. If someone volunteers for something in August, they might not necessarily still be willing to go the next August. Those are just some of my immediate thoughts on kind of the makeup of the committees. I do generally think there's also this component when we're appointing, right, that you have a relationship with a board member, and so you can report back from that committee to that board member. And I've certainly found that of value in catching up kind of with my appointees in terms of what the committee's up to, how it's going, et cetera. So I think that's a characteristic that is valuable. The things that I go to think about when we talk about board appointed committees is kind of the recruitment function and how we bolster that a little bit. Those are some of my initial thoughts. I don't know, it sounds like we're going in pretty strict dais order, but I reserve the right to return for additional comments if that's okay.
We actually weren't. Dr. McKibben mentioned at the end he was just looking to see whoever turned the mic on, and we'll go kind of in that order. So.
Got it.
Ms. Creasy.
This is a tough one, because if I think about my appointees, many of them from diverse communities, I would lose them all. And they bring tremendous value to our committees. Everybody does, but you know what I mean? So I like the idea of, trying to have representation from all of our areas, but I don't like the idea of being put in the box, because there's a whole lot of diversity beyond geographical diversity. And as board members, I think that should be our decision of who we sign on in our name as our appointee. And we have talent throughout the district. So I think that, I'm thinking with my mouth right now, but I think that it's a layer that we should consider, but the choice should be ours.
I actually agree with both of you in the sense that, if we are going to appoint 2 per board member, why not have 1 in your district and 1 have the right to go out if you want? And that way your district is represented. But saying that is, I think we have to keep an eye on the ability for our committees to work effectively. So, for example, if we each 7 have 2, that's 14 members now, for example, on LCAP or, facilities, whatever the case may be, we have to keep an eye on that number to make sure that they as a committee are able to function. Just to say we need 14, I'm not sure that's the answer. I think that, again, it's per committee that they work effectively. And because 14, what good is having 14 if we can't ever get a quorum for them to vote on, right? So I think that is more important. And I would love to go individually comment on a specific committee, or is that later on? Should we wait later on?
I think you can speak on a specific committee as well. Now, this is kind of our general conversation about committee members. We'll talk about the student representation next, and then reporting back to the board. So this is probably the best time if you have some thoughts.
Okay, I do. So I have been thinking, along with Ms. Costa and I have been talking about the LCAP, because we're both liaison. And this is my first time in 10 years, first time on LCAP. And so I've watched as a third party, and I admit that my knowledge on LCAP has not been that sharp because I was not the liaison for that committee. But what I have watched is that, you know, LCAP, when LCAP began, we knew that it was going to be a changing scenario. And as a result of that, I think, or I would suggest to my colleagues that this may be a good time in this transition period that we take a look at LCAP and where we are. How do we function in our L committee compared to other LCAP committees, not only in our county, but in the state? You know, what works for them may work for us. And it doesn't be that just because of them that we need to do the same. But I think there's things that we can learn. And one of the things is board-appointed committees. That is, I think, the only committee that we have as a district that is not a board-appointed committee. Okay, you're right. But as a result of that, though, I think that if we, for example, if we were to go to a board-appointed committee for the LCAP, I think that relationship that we are able to go out and recruit somebody that we think will be effective in that committee, not only will help us, but will help that committee as well, because I think you all got the report of attendance of the LCAP committee, and the average member in that term for the last 3 years served for 1 year. And we all know how important that LCAP committee is, and the learning curve is huge, right? And for an LCAP member, they can serve 3 2-year terms, you know, and so think about that person who leaves after 6 years. In the last 2 years, we've had, I think, 2 of our, one turned out, and Mr. Nelson will be in June. And I look at Mr. Nelson and how much impact he has on this committee, his knowledge compared to someone who's brand new. And I think there's some learning curve as well, as that as a board member, I'd love to be able to have to appoint that member and to help them understand what the LCAP is and how important it is that they report back to us and give us the suggestions I think we need to function as a board. So those are just a couple things that I have observed, and by all means, I'm not saying this is an ineffective committee at all. They're incredible people, but I think that we can possibly work better. And I think that it's time to look at others. What do they do that we don't? Or what do we do that they don't as well, that we can add, adjust, adapt, along with this discussion as we think we can help, as well as go to our LCAP committee and say, hey, how do we get better? You know, because that's what we want to do. We definitely don't want to waste people's time as they serve on this, not only LCAP, but any committee. They want to be valued members of the community that help out. So I know I've said a lot. I'm just going to throw out some things, but I'll leave it at that to hear my colleagues' comments. Ms. Costa.
I started, when the LCAP started, on the committee as the board liaison and served on it for 3 or 4 years and then passed it on to somebody else as the board liaison. And at that time, I was consulting for CSBA, and I went up and down the state talking to other school board members about various issues, but LCAP came up. And at that time, there were just less than a handful of districts that had an LCAP that was structured the way ours was. And I was surprised by that. And so I came back and asked, Well, that was the way it was designed for our district at that point in time. And we didn't look at other options. And I agree with Mr. Hernandez. I think it would be interesting to find out what other districts are doing, how they're appointing members to the LCAP, what types of committees. If it were a board-appointed committee, it would be under Brown Act, and I think that's always important for our board committees, so that's a piece for me. And I think about it, if the 7 board members appointed 2 members to LCAP, if we tried to look at representing across our district in areas, we might have better representation for the LCAP. So those are just a few of my thoughts.
Ms. Creasy, you had a follow-up that you wanted to do?
I lost that. I don't know what that was, but
Go and then, because we're going to do another round, if need be, but I'll go and then you can. Okay. One of the things I think we have to be mindful of is that particularly on board-appointed committees, we haven't been overwhelmed in the number of people that have signed up. And so I think that I'm intrigued by the idea of one inside of your representative area and one out. But on the other hand, I want to make sure that we have the best possible people on the thing. And if there were really good people, I would want to be able to appoint them wherever they're from. So that's and one of the things I think that we haven't. It's not for lack of trying, but I don't think we've been wondrous in the amount of recruiting we have done for our committee members, and that this may be an opportunity to do that better. A couple of other things that I note in terms of on board-appointed committees and that sort of thing, and I'm particularly was struck by my time on LCAP committee and when we started putting students on that. I don't think the students and many of the LCAP members had any idea of the amount of reading, the amount of time that committee, and certainly on curriculum instruction, there was an enormous reading load that many did not know. And so I think when we're onboarding people onto committees, we have to do a better job of making sure they understand what the responsibility is. And in the case of curriculum instruction, they sometimes meet twice a month and so forth, whereas I think most of the other committees, that's not the case. So understanding what it takes to be a committee member, I think is important. But I do think that we want to have the best people, and that may not necessarily be somebody from the area that you represent. So that's my thought. Does anybody else want to? I see Ms. Viasco's.
Yeah, if you don't mind if I kind of offer an immediate reaction to that, is just, I think you echoed a lot of kind of what I said as well in terms of concerns around willingness to participate, recruitment, et cetera. And whatever that's a symptom of, we have a responsibility to fix it. I can't tell you what it is, but I feel like that's on us to figure out, and our responsibility to communicate better the role of the committees, why it's important to our broader community. Like, we're not doing a good enough job of that. And it's not a, I say that without judgment. I just am saying, like, I want to take it upon us to be responsible for that. But I just wonder if more consistency, and you kind of mentioned better and stronger onboarding. Right now, we don't really have any. Right now, it's just an application. It's a piece of paper that folks fill out. So I wonder if there's an opportunity kind of in conjunction with each new school year or at the end of every school year or something to offer an opportunity for community members to really figure out the important, like what the committees are about, why and how it's important, the opportunity that they might have, and make that part of kind of our recruitment process in some way. I just feel like there's a component here about communicating the significance and doing stronger outreach that should be part of any steps moving forward.
Thank you. I agree with you 100%. I'll be the first to tell you again, when I became the liaison for the LCAP, going back to LCAP, I'm using them as an example, is that, Mr. Nelson was kind enough to send me the 6 roles of a board member produced by the California School Board Association, and I found that extremely helpful to me. And I say that because if I appoint somebody to the LCAP as a board member, I'm going to make sure that they understand, one, what their roles are, so they can help me fulfill these 6 roles as a board member, that we understand what it is. And I think that, I think that we too need to educate ourselves to make sure that we understand. And again, I'll put myself, learning curve for me has been very great for the last couple months. So, and I'm grateful for that. And I think, though, that we too, just like Paula said, we need to do a better job to understand what we need to do as board members, but then to translate more than anything is we appoint somebody, what that committee does, what's their function, how can we help them, and then more than anything, report back to me so we can have dialogue, And so I'll leave it there.
Thank you. I have a couple of thoughts. So going back to Mr. Hernandez's suggestion about, and Ms. Costa's, what do other districts do for LCAP? I would love that information, just because I don't know. I have no idea. So I think just that information pool would be very, very helpful. I really liked your idea of one in area and one free space. I thought that's good. I think too, though, because I hear what Mr. McKibben or Dr. McKibben, President McKibben is saying too. It's like we want to be able to pull the talent wherever the talent may be. Maybe instead of making it a hard and fast rule, it's like a highly recommended kind of section. So we all as board members more board members know, it's highly recommended that we follow this mapping of one in and one freebie, and see how it goes for a year. Let's just see how it goes instead of putting ourselves in a box. I wanted to point out that we do have 3 committees that we don't have direct appointments to, and that's CAC, Bond Oversight, and LCAP. And I had one more note. The roles. And so something that I've talked to Mr. Kern about quite a bit is that this idea that I've had that, our community at large really, a lot of people don't understand how a district works. What is the role of the board? What are the roles of committees? What is the role of the school site? What's the role of cabinet? I would love to see a video that folks that could go to at any time that we push out at the beginning of every school year that really list out the roles. Now, maybe not a deep dive on each committee. Maybe that could be part of a video series where it's like, here's this overview of what our district is, and then we could break it down and deep dive into the committees. And so when we're recruiting folks, we could start, as we send an application, watch this video, and we can follow up with a conversation. I really liked your idea too about, I have worked really hard to build relationships and dialogue and have back and forth with my appointees, and I do with most of them. I think it would be helpful if there was kind of an onboarding or orientation that maybe was held by staff, but we attend that as well, so that we can receive that in partnership with new appointees when they're coming on board. I think that would be really helpful. I just don't know that we should take that on solely ourselves as a board member because we might get it wrong. We just might get it wrong. So having staff leadership in that way and just kind of a template format for us to participate in might be good.
So I think that, for example, I think if we continue to think of ourselves as a team, if I run across a person that's in Pam's district, I don't need to grab that person under my, point to, I'd much rather call Pam and say, Pam, you got to go talk to Melissa because she's outstanding. She'd be a great member of LCAP. What's Pam going to do? She's probably going to call that person, to see if Saul's crazy or right, But the likelihood of you calling me and tell me somebody, I'm probably going to call them with great interest because you recommended them to me.
Ms. Costa.
I think that's a really good point, actually, and I would follow up, and I think all of us would. I like the one in, one out. I would like to add another possibility, and that would be that the members that we've appointed would be able to continue until the end of their term and then look at the one in, one out. I would feel badly if we stop people mid-term in the work that they've invested in as well.
I do have one more comment. And one, generally speaking, I think our committees are better when there is student representation, and I just want to offer that. Now, well, it was a bullet point here, so anyway, I'll repeat it later too. But I think also when I think, my full consideration of these items is actually more like consistently thinking about what happens when it's not us here, right? And how do we instill some of what we come to know as kind of best practices of being cordial and collegial, et cetera? How does that get reflected in any kind of governance documents moving forward? And so just broadly speaking, I wanted to offer that. I probably would have offered that at the beginning, but I apologize for my tardy attendance. But I think more broadly, I don't know if it would be appropriate, but for something to consider is building in some kind of expectation that we are more consistently talking to our committee members. There isn't anything now. I think we kind of just operate on our own, which I'm not suggesting in any way that there's evidence that doesn't work, but moving forward, even kind of like a minimum once a quarter check-in or something like that, and building that in moving forward, one, I think would help me be a better board member, but two, I think will help strengthen those relationships moving forward when different people sit in these chairs.
Thank you for the robust conversation. There were some great ideas in there, so we appreciate that very much. And to pick up on Ms. Fiesquez's comment around students, then as our next topic. So looking at our committees as they do grow, one of the conversations we have been having for some time is student voice and student representation on these groups. So as we look at perhaps some changes to these groups, how do we want to see that student voice represented? Is it a formal role where we have student members on those committees? Or is it an informal role where we're asking those committees to go out and engage with our students on a regular basis? And what would that look like, and what would the expectation be if it was an informal role? Keeping in mind that right now we would have if we stick with 2 appointees per member, that leaves us with an even number of members on these committees. If we were to appoint 1 student to these committees, that would also give us an odd number of members for voting purposes as well. And I will pause there again for conversation and anything else Superintendent Kern might want to add to this one.
Are you implying that if a student member is on LCAP, that they would have voting privileges? Is that what you said?
Okay.
No, we're thinking, like right now, you've got curriculum and standards, and you've got the facilities. Let's use those 2 committees, okay? They don't have a student representation. I have had board members actually have discussions with me about, hey, could I appoint a student to one of these committees? I think where we wanted to have part of this conversation was if every board member appointed a student and then an adult, let's say, we could end up with 7 students, 7 adults. That may be okay. What we've seen on the PAC is that probably our attendance rate, which we struggle with for members in general, and Mike, you and I have had this conversation, isn't as good with our student representations. If we had 1 student representation on the curriculum and standards and the facilities, and if I won't go into the PAC, because if we're gonna come back with some kind of conversation about how and if that would change, we could have that discussion with the student piece there at that point in time. But I think we're thinking about those other 2 committees right now.
That's okay. Sorry about that. I keep putting it down so it's not too disruptive or I'm not accidentally hitting it. I will just echo what I said last time, which is that I think student representation on the boards is important. I have not resolved the math part of this yet, though. I mean, I don't know if there's a way to all agree that a certain proportion is students, and kind of we're just talking about that or in constant communication or what. I do think saying everybody, say we get 2 plus a student board member, that raises just, I think, volume concerns on a lot of our committees. So I don't think I have anything particularly profound to offer right now, but I'll keep thinking about the math.
So I think students, we should try to have a student on all committees. I don't think that having each board member appointing a student and a non-student, I don't think that's going to I don't think that's practical, but I do think that we should strive to have a student, at least one student on every committee. And again, just a couple of thoughts without really thinking it out too heavily yet. We could handle student appointment, either the board liaison could appoint that position, or, we can handle those appointments like we do for LCAP, CAC, and bond oversight now, where we get a list and we as a board all approve those folks. But I do think that we should have a student. Honestly, I wish we had a student on dais too. I think that voice is lacking and we need to have it at the table. I think that's enough for now. And voice. So if I heard correctly, I guess students don't get a vote in LCAP?
Yes, they do.
Okay, I misunderstood that.
They do.
Oh, they didn't.
But that's subject to,
Okay, so.
we'll be discussing that also, but right now they do.
Okay, and so I would like to just say that I think students should have equal voice and vote as a member of any committee.
Ms. Costa?
I definitely don't think that each board member should appoint somebody. I think it will make the committees so large that our chances of ever getting a quorum are very limited. I really like going out and getting student input. I don't think one student represents this vast district, and I'm worried about that being the visual that that student is going to represent all students in San Juan for curriculum and standards, or all students in San Juan for facilities. But I think it's so critical that we go out and talk to students and gather input and go to a variety of communities of students to find out what they're thinking about the issues that that committee is working on. So I don't know how that plays into everybody else's thinking, but that seems very important to me. I know that the work that Superintendent Kern's committee has done and the feedback that they've given us has been invaluable to me. And I respect very much their thinking, as well as many of the other student groups. And I think by hearing a more diverse voice, it may be more useful, at least to me as a board member. So it's another way to look at it.
3 points. One, I go back to the point that I made earlier, is I think we need to be mindful of student time and the commitment and so forth. And I think looking at LCAP as the example, I think one of the reasons why the attendance has not been terrific there is because it takes a lot of time and their homework comes first. And I think we have to continue to be mindful of that. The second is that I think that I agree with Ms. Costa in that we all should have an opportunity to appoint, but if we appointed one to every committee, it would be unmanageable. So I would recommend that the liaison to that committee be the person that does the appointing of that, which was likely to end up in most of us do it. Particularly, I think it is reasonable for us to think about a student liaison to, for example, CAC, even though it's not a board-appointed committee and so forth. But I think that's something we ought to think of. And of course, right now, the 2 liaisons to LCAP do the selecting of the members of that. So that would be be their, it could be, well, be their appointments, thinking about all as, well, becoming 7 of us having an opportunity to appoint a student. And finally, I have no problem with the student having voting rights.
Students do on our LCAP, so just to clarify that. So we can take what was shared here today. Just for a historical context, we used to have board members appoint 3 individuals to curriculum and standards and the facilities committee. And they struggled getting people. And I will tell you that from staff's perspective, the committees are much more highly functioning now than they were when we had more members. Now, that's not necessarily just based on the number, but we have seen that, I would say. So I think what we'll do is we'll just take back what we've heard, and as Trent said, ultimately, we'll bring this information back to the board with potential changes. Now, related to the PAC, what I would say is I've heard a couple of comments about it'd be interesting to see what others are doing. What I would recommend is that staff do a little research on what it looks like in other areas, and then ultimately bring back some information, which then could result in the board taking an action at maybe a later board meeting if they were to want to change what that would look like. So we could, based on what we've heard tonight, those are 2 things that we could do.
Yeah, I agree with you. And just one last comment on the PAC. You know, currently we have 4 students on that committee. And again, Mr. McKibben, a lot of these times, these are students that are overachievers, if you will. And not only do they have homework, they have activities and they have lives, if you will. And so I wonder too, you know, right now we have 4 members. 2 of them attend pretty regularly and 2 not so much. And so I agree with you, Mr. Kern. I would love to have a robust amount of students in every committee that we can, with the caveat that we be cognizant of that, you know, that number be a working number, you know, just to have 4 or 6 or whatever, but only 2, you know, are really active. I would rather much have 2, and those 2 be very involved with that voting privilege as well to give input from a student perspective.
You know, one of the things when we first implemented, when the LCAP came out, I remember we were pressed because it was when Dirk Garcia was still here and Donna were here, and they proposed this idea of a PAC. We had to implement some things fairly quickly. When I look at what we do in terms of gathering input and feedback across the board in our community now compared to what we did, that was probably going on 11 years ago, and our cultural brokers and all these other groups and the work that John does going out, you can't even compare. And maybe that's almost what we could share with the board as well. When we started this is how we gathered information, and this is who we went to, and this is who we do now. Because I know one of the challenges is that ultimately our committees should be representing broadly the district, and making recommendations to the board based on that. We provide a lot of information, and we go out and we reach out to so many folks. We want all those people to have a voice in really what comes back to the board. And so that can be part of what we look into as well. And that's maybe where you don't see other districts utilizing a separate PAC. I think what we're likely to find is they use a variety of parent groups as that kind of who they're bouncing information off. So again, we'll come back with more information on that.
I don't forget what was just said. So 2 things. I think, Mr. Hernandez, you had just mentioned the 2 students. I also wanted to say for the record, I agree 2 students is better than 1, because sending 1 student in this room with all these adults is just cruel. Have a partner to do this work together that's your peer, I think is very important. So I think it should be 2 students on each committee. And also, I appreciate what was said about, I know we're focused on PAC, but I think for all of the committees, and that's something that I've brought up to Superintendent Kern before, is I would love to explore how our committees function, because the world changes, things are different, so not as a criticism, just how do committees function? And I think that it's really important that we start with the goals and the purpose before we even talk about function. Maybe it's time to really look at the committee's purpose. It's my understanding that all of our committees are board advisory committees, but frankly, I don't feel advised by all the committees, and not that's a deficit on any individual's part. It's just the functionality and what we do in the way of engaging them. So again, I don't mean that as a criticism, but I think that's something to look at and what is their role, what are their goals, how do they function? And maybe even bring some uniformity to that would be great. I know I've talked to, in CAC, I've held on really tight to serving that committee, because I think I have done some good work in there and building relationships in there, and something that we've explored, or I've explored with some of the PAC chairs, is creating a process where there's an identification of priorities that they establish and build work plans behind. So we really are empowering the stakeholder group to, they have great ideas, but we can't do everything, right? So, and this is something that I have a lot of experience in my day jobs for the last couple of decades, of really empowering stakeholder I'm trying to not say stakeholder anymore, community groups to really have that ownership and set their priorities. And then we help build out how we achieve these goals for a better district overall. And I think all that starting with the goal of the committee. What is the real purpose? What is their real function? And then we build the functionality of how they operate after that.
I'm going to do a time check right now. We're nearly at 5 o'clock, and we have a half hour to go. Shall we try to go a little faster?
Yeah,
I
we-
think we've
we
got
do
three more topics, including equal voice, graduation, and start times and meetings and things like that.
We do have a few more topics. I believe the second section may go a little bit faster, but a little more speed may help us get to closed session just on time for you. We will end this slide, though, with one more conversation, and it really plays into some of the topics and the comments you've already made about keeping those connections with committee members, how they function and how they serve the board. And that's the idea of how these groups come back and report information to you. So right now what we see is a large amount of inconsistency. We have some committees who are sending written reports on an infrequent basis, some on a very frequent basis, others who are coming and doing reports to the board. The question is, what meets your needs to help inform your decision-making and your role as a board member from these committees? How should that be structured? What pieces can we put in place to support these groups, to support your needs in reporting information back to you?
My
Any
immediate
additional thoughts?
reaction is that, sorry, I'm just going to jump in, I do think more consistently, even a written report would be super helpful. One, so that we are getting shared information, or the same information. But I also just want to be cognizant of not adding more work to what's already a big, it's like the meetings take work, et cetera. My immediate reflection to your question, or to the questions that you posed, Trent, was first, it would be great if we heard more consistently at the meetings, but then if we said something like, I erred on not saying everyone must come give a report, because I don't think that that's a valuable use of time either. I don't want folks to just give reports for the sake of giving reports. So those are my immediate thoughts. I do think maybe a quarterly written report that does not have to be an extraordinary amount of time, or length rather, would be helpful, and maybe there could be a template that helps frame that. But again, want to balance how much work goes into it, both for the committee members and for staff. Those are my thoughts.
I can't answer this quickly, but I have a lot of ideas in my head, so I would love to be able to follow up on this conversation and just write down my thoughts, because I have a whole lot of ideas of how we can functionalize and engage and get report outs, but I can't do it in our time limit we have now. So can I do that? And then also I would say too, I like the idea of having regular reports. I think my only fear is that we're going to scare people away, because who's doing this writing? Like, I serve on a lot of boards and I'm not required to write anything for any of them, you know? But I agree with what you said, you know, for all of us to get the same information and be able to really digest it instead of just, you know, them talking to a dais, it's different. So I would love to explore that further. What does that look like? I know I would like more consistently, maybe quarterly reporting would be great, whether it be written as well as a presentation that may be more than just a quick item at the top of our agenda, but an actual agenda item. But I also agree with Ms. Villasquez when she says we don't need a report just a report. So I would like more time to reflect on this and talk it out.
Just one note, that the written, the possibility of the written is, and I think we get them on most of the committees, are their minutes and so forth. And so we do get some written things already, and that wouldn't be an extra thing. Yeah. The other thing is, I think that I would like to see reports from more committees, and I don't know whether it would be quarterly or not, but one of the things I would recommend is when we have those reports that they be timed. So that people know what their expectation is on them and so forth. Those are my only two comments on that. Is there anything else that any of the board members would like to say on this topic? Yes, Ms. Vasquez. Yeah. I can't
I
get
got
it out.
you. It's okay. I know you're talking to me. We're good. I just wonder if, similar to how we rotate schools out, what if it's like hearing from two committees, you know, every other month or something like that? I don't know. But where they come once a year in total, right? It's not like everybody's coming every month, but there's a fall and a spring report of some kind on a rotating basis. And it can be time limited. That's just what I would offer as a thought.
All right. I will take us to our final topic area in this idea of representation and voice, which is actually to talk about you as board members and how you interact with each other. So just as the dynamics on our committees are going to change with that committee size changing and the voices on those committees changing, so too will the boards. So one of the questions we have is, what structures can we put into place for how board members interact with each other, and how we give equal voice to board members during board meetings? So one specific example, board staff reports. So should each board member have equal time for a board staff report? Should there be structure to those board staff reports? And in the larger context of board interactions, how do we ensure equal voice amongst 7 members of the board, or equal opportunity for voice amongst 7 members of the board?
I'll get us started. First and foremost, I have a love-hate relationship with board reports. I'll just say that to begin with. A love-hate relationship with board reports. It's a mix of, this is an opportunity for us to hear from the community and input. And so oftentimes I feel like I have plenty of opportunities to kind of share information or what I'm up to, et cetera, or I can use it, you know, social media, et cetera. And so I'm often left reflecting, like, is me sharing out an appropriate use of our meeting times? And the answer is probably yes, frankly. Like, I think the community wants us to know where we're going, and it's an opportunity to celebrate our kids and the schools, and I love that part of it. I love sharing out and hearing where my colleagues have been and what we've been working on. I struggle with it on a, you know, every meeting. It's like, what am I going to share and to what end, et cetera. So all that's to say is some expectations and norms would probably be helpful and appropriate, and this is where we might look to see what other boards do, even to, you know, where to place them in the meetings, you know, how many minutes do folks get, what else should be covered without being too limited, right? I don't think we should be providing a list of just cover the site visits that you made or anything like that. Like, this is also, we are all elected. We should be able to have the opportunity to use this as to say what we want to say. So I think at minimum, some time limitations would be good and helpful, but those are just, I have struggled with the board reports, and I've been on this board since 2016, so I just wanted to put that out there and see what my colleagues think.
Before I say this, I want you to know that I love you all, okay? That being said, I sometimes, you know, when we get this packet and it's massive, you know, we have questions on it. I wondered if, and I try myself, and I sometimes take over and I talk too much, I get that. But if we try to focus on, if you have a question on that packet, okay? Just a technical question, why not shoot an email to that staff member and say, hey, Trent, item, can you answer this question? You know what I mean? And I get that answer back. And if I feel that that item needs to be brought to the public community, I think that we should. But I think that having 7 members and each talk on every agenda item and they take 2 minutes, that means every agenda is going to take 15 to 20 minutes, every single agenda item. And I just wonder how much can we help by just getting the information we need? And again, if you have the option, and again, if you need to discuss it publicly, then do so. But many times, I'm asking a question and it could be answered via a quick email. And I don't know how you guys all feel about that, but I just want you to think about that because when we go to 7 and we all take turns, you know, it's going to be lengthy.
You know, you're looking directly at me. This whole
Let me
time.
look at, I'll look out here. I'll look out here. I look out here. I said I loved you though.
I know, I felt it here.
No, really, I'm not pointing fingers at anybody. Pointing at myself, really. I just want us to think about it because I think we could be effective. And if it's just a question we didn't answer, go at the staff. I'm sure that they'd probably rather answer your email than publicly, you know, having them think on the spot. That's my comment.
And I'm looking at you like you have 2 heads because I thought that was the protocol we had. So I've been under the impression since we first got elected to the board that we always shoot email questions, we get a response, and then we shoot something back that says, I think this is something that's important for the public to know. I'll be asking it publicly because the general public needs to know it. Or, thank you so much for the information. That's what I needed to move forward. So I'm thinking.
I didn't know that, so thank you.
That's so funny. Okay.
So I hear you loud and clear. I will say that I do, in my experience, a lot of my questions and thinking comes up when I'm hearing folks talk, especially because there's other people, there's more than the slides are going to offer. So as the wheels are turning, or if I hear you, my colleagues say something, it'll spark something in me. So I hear you, you know, and I do try to reach out with questions that are, you know, for me, the packets are so comprehensive, you know, unless there's some super technical, I usually don't have a ton of early questions now that I've been in the role for a little bit longer, but I hear what you're saying. So going back to board reports and just time board members get to talk, I'm hesitant to put support behind restricting us. We get no time. I mean, because of the Brown Act, we don't get to talk to each other and have a dialogue anywhere else but right here as a group. And I'm just thinking, you know, we are elected into this position to be able to make policy decisions, but if we are truncating our time to ask questions and have the dialogue to get there, I don't know that we're doing our constituents a service. That said, you know, I think that, you know, having some norms in place, not necessarily hard or fast rules. I mean, I would hope none of us have hour-long board reports every night. You know, that would be brutal. But at the same time, you know, if there's something that needs to be said and, you know, as an elected official, you need to say it, and this is the only place for us to really do it, then that's what we're going to have to do. Because I do also agree, you know, we do have an opportunity to make statements, which I do on social media, but that doesn't mean all of us are seeing it and can talk about it, you know, and I think that that's the value of bringing it up on dais. So maybe the answer too, because I hear you, Mr. Hernandez too, adding more members is more time, more questions. Maybe we just have shorter agendas. So we're not here all night, you know, really focused agendas. So we can spend, if there's a lot of time on an item, we really can dedicate it. Nobody feels like they're having to rush through.
That's a great idea.
So we came to a decision. I think that's it.
If I could jump in real quick. Thank you, Mr. Kern, for your input. But two, I don't know, when I read the slide, there was something about the slide that directed me to, I want to make sure that it's clear. My initial comments were limited for some reason and wrongly to the board report side of things. So I just wanted to make that clear. I think the discussion on each agenda item, I would also not support any kind of strict limitations on that. I mean, yes, we should still continue, I think, to address questions beforehand and even oftentimes repeat that, which I've done as well to make sure, right? Because I think the public deserves to know that there's deliberation here, that this meeting, we're not just theater. We do listen and exchange ideas and talk about critical issues. So I wanted to make sure that it was noted that my initial comments were limited to the board reports. I think around board discussions, I concur. Oftentimes something doesn't occur to me until, sometimes I just pick things up differently when it's told to me or presented to me by staff than when I'm reading it on a PowerPoint and reviewing it in advance. So I wanted to clarify that on my previous remarks.
This is a wondering, but I'm wondering if discussion didn't get longer when we went to the COVID protocol where each person said something in order on the dais. And prior to that, our protocol had been, if you wanted to say something, you raised your hand, or what we're doing tonight, you turn on your microphone and you're recognized by the president. So I'm wondering, as we go back to a more, whatever normal is anymore, way of operating, if that will also change things in terms of the amount of conversation.
So Dr. McKibben and I actually had this conversation at our last board prep, and it was generated by a conversation that I had with one of you around exactly that, kind of being called on, put you on the spot, rather than at times, if you have a comment, identify that you have a comment. So, and that's something we actually talked about even tonight. And it's kind of why we try to change up the way this is happening here as well. So appreciate that kind of falls in line with some other comments that I'd heard.
To say that having been on both sides of it from a staff point of view at the state level and that sort of thing, I always appreciated those calls to avoid the ambush questions. And there were those from governor-appointed committees and so forth and so forth. So I think that's a very good point in terms of us having a personal and ethical opinion of calling the board members to ask the questions that need clarification on your part. And the other one is, I think exactly the point that we made is that we need to go back to something before, because it was, I'm afraid that I was, pushing people to talk when they probably didn't want to or need to.
Moving us on to the second half of our conversation in the next 15 minutes. I'm going to actually bounce around just a little bit over what we had shown on the agenda to make sure we get to a couple of important topics. And then if we have some time, we'll go back. And again, this will be an ongoing conversation, so this will not be the end of the conversation. So if we don't get to it tonight, we will have more opportunities. I'm going to advance actually to
Mr. Allen, you know what? We probably have a little more time. I think we can have at least a half an hour left. Closed session doesn't have as much in it. So, and I want to make sure folks feel comfortable with this. Mr. Thigpen, I mean, we probably could do 10 or 15 minutes at the most in closed session. So let's keep this conversation, and just let's be attentive to the time. But I think you're okay, Mr. Allen.
All right, we will stay on the agenda then and go to our next topic. So this next section is all about logistics and mechanics. So these are some of those more practical things that we need to know as staff to make sure we can have things set up, that we can arrange things ahead of time, specific to how things operate. So the first area that we want to talk about is graduations, and if there would be any changes to how we staff board members at graduations. Certainly looking at, would we want to assign board members to their high school within their areas for graduations to be that representative there? Would you still want to rotate throughout the district? And then again, is there an opportunity here for creating either formal or informal voice with students perhaps in working with a school within that area or again throughout the district at your pleasure, for having that relationship throughout the year and then supporting a school in the graduation process.
So let me build a little bit on that as well, even in having conversations with students, but even some of you about this looks very differently, because if you have a school that's in your area, you potentially, over a period of 4 years, how we normally rotate, maybe not be at that graduation at all, or maybe hit it once. And so some thinking could be that board member is present. And we're really looking at moving away from board members doing speeches and more certifying the class. As we've talked with students, they, to be totally candid, when you ask kids who they remember who gave their speech, they say the student. And then if they're at one of those schools where they kind of select a teacher or a counselor or somebody who has meaning, they don't even remember their principals giving speeches and being responsive to that. So we're trying to value student voice even in that. We think it's important for the board member who is in that region to be there, but then also an opportunity for a second board member to attend as well. So theoretically, Saul, you're in Del Campo. You would attend Del Campo's graduation every year. And with 7, and when we move to 7, you won't have to go to as many graduations. Really, there would be 2. So you would go to that graduation and one other graduation. So you may attend the graduation at Del Campo and Encina with the representative. So those are just some thoughts that we've had. And so kind of want to get some thinking again where you guys would be moving forward with that.
I would love to be the one that certifies the class. Oftentimes they're going long, it's hot. Parents want to see their kids graduate. That's why they're there. So that's my immediate reflection. And then I would like the opportunity to be in attendance in other ones outside of a specific region. The way it is now, we kind of rotate around, but only one board member goes to one school. I think I would like at least the option to just be at the graduation of other ones that we're not certifying.
Ms. Costa.
I agree with Ms. Viescas. I would also like to attend another one. And I like the idea of the certification. I think that the student speeches are really powerful and they really matter to the students. And even though I contact the students ahead of time and ask them, what things would you like me to talk about, what's really important to you, and all of that, I'm not egotistical enough to believe that that's the same as hearing your peer talk about the 4 years at that high school. And I really believe those are the voices that should be heard that night, our student voices. So I would agree with what Ms. Viasquez said, and I think it would be, I would hate to only go to one graduation just because they're so joyous, but to go to the one in my particular area and then be able to join another board member at another graduation or 2 would, I think, be wonderful.
And I, even through the conversation, there's no saying that you couldn't attend 2 or that there could be 3 board members. We couldn't go to 4 because then we would be a Brown Act violation. But if you were all possibly sitting, well, we won't worry about that right now. Because Linda kind of nodded her head, not so sure either. But we don't want to limit those graduations that you could attend. So that's something that we ultimately could decide. We just know that's a busy time of the year as well for everyone.
I like Ms. Viesca's idea as well. Yeah, but a couple things. My area has 2 high schools. So that's a whole thing for my area. I think my area is the only area with that. And then I think about if I win my election, Caden's going to graduate. I would rather be a mom that day and not certify anything, although that might be cool. It's something I have to think about. But I would like that option. So I bring this up just to say, I like the direction in the frame, the wire frames, but also I think it's important to allow some flexibility in conversation. Because maybe, like if I don't want to do El Camino that year, I would like another board member to tap in. Or, what if, and I hope there's no there won't be hurt feelings, but what if one of us has a relationship with a school outside of our area and that, maybe they really want us, maybe there's been that dialogue, and it's not in our area. So I think, the wireframes, I think your idea was great, but I think that we should allow for some flexibility because things are gonna come up.
I actually like giving speeches, but I agree with you guys 100%. I love the fact that, I certify my area if possible and at the same time be invited to others, and I think it's a great idea. And I was able to give the diploma to my son when he graduated, and it's a very special thing. And I think as a board member, you should have that privilege, and that's one of the perks of being a board member. So, all right, that's my point.
I am egotistical enough to believe that one of the things that I do enjoy in terms of speeches is going to the high school and building the speech by talking to students and talking to various groups and then building the speech out of their accomplishments and so forth. And I think it does add a certain air of dignity and so forth. And I think that we may be accomplishing that. And I think in terms of talking about student groups, I may be able to better build a story, in going to groups before. So I will concede that I am alone on this one. But I do think that it's important that board members are involved and we can accomplish telling their story in different ways and perhaps through graduation, even though I like doing them. Mr. Al.
Thank you for that. Moving us along, this one is a little bit easier. And this is just really recognizing that given more folks on the board, that we will likely have some lengthier discussions if we don't shorten the agenda, as Mr. Kern would like to see us do. So that means that we may need to adjust the times of the meeting. So if we were to need to adjust the times, would 6 o'clock be an acceptable time to adjust meetings to, as one thought? Also keeping in mind that there may be some impacts to closed session and how that operates, because it may be hard for some members to get here before, say, 5 o'clock. It may not be possible for us to move closed session earlier, which may mean that we need to have closed session broken to where we come back after open session to finish closed sessions in the future as well. So that would play into conversations around timing. But would love any thoughts or thinking you have on how timing of board meetings specifically might be impacted.
Yeah, and we haven't had to return to closed session. I think Pam and Saul, there was a period of time where you guys, when you were on the board, were returning to closed session almost every board meeting because of whatever the discussions were. That is something that if dependent upon the structure that you guys desire, we can do. That's not a problem.
I'm gonna go ahead and jump in, if that's okay.
I'm sorry. Please.
Our meetings don't really go that late. I'm not saying I want them to go later by any means, so don't let that be the takeaway. But frankly, we don't go as long as some of our neighbors, and that's not the goal. That's not I know, I'm not saying that's what I'm aiming for here. I just want to note that. And I want to also just express, I am for adding time to the back end and going later. I am not supportive of moving the meetings earlier. I was late to this meeting. This needs to be a board that allows for working people to participate as well without, I felt really guilty about being late to this meeting, but I have a job as well. This needs to be a place where parents, working people, et cetera, can make it work. And I'm not saying that being a board member is the most conducive to all of that, but we should keep it as easy as possible, I think. So I'm really not in favor of moving them earlier, and I wanted to express that really strongly.
I agree. I don't think we should move the time earlier at all. And as far as later is concerned, I think that's a let's see how it goes kind of thing. I don't think we just try to have a longer meeting. I'm not for that at all, at all. So I think we go, if we have to go later, we go. That's just the way it is. But to schedule it later, I don't agree with that.
I agree. We have to make sure, I mean, beyond just the board, it's the public participation, making sure that folks have a chance to feed their kids before they join into us for a fun evening. But I'm going to echo again, we need shorter agendas because the time crunch is going to be a thing for sure, with more voices. That's going to be the case. So I really think that we should look at really truncating our agendas to meet that need.
It's interesting you say that because we have a light agenda tonight, partially because this was before, and actually at our next agenda we do as well. So we will take that into, sometimes it's just really challenging when you even look at the cycles of when things come through. And I will say this, even we've been talking, and Dr. McKibben and I already had a conversation about this. Sometimes we do business just for business sake. And our board meeting at the start of the school year every year in August is absolutely just a huge challenge for staff in that we're trying to open a school. And here we have a meeting and we have folks scrambling around. I said, really this year, we need to have the meeting because the things on the consent calendar, all the hires, all those things the board needs to approve, that first August meeting is going to be a consent calendar, and that's it, nothing else. Because I've got to stop pressuring staff to be working when the focus should be on opening schools and worrying about, because I don't think that the public really knows our entire schedule. You've got to get your board stuff in 2 weeks before so that then we can look at it in cabinet and review, and then the board president and myself meet and go over that the week before the board meeting. So that cycle is really challenging. So it's something, I've heard from at least 2 board members. We will take that into consideration.
I just want to share, this is something that we've transitioned to in my day job too. Our board has decided they wanted more time in their meetings to have a real deep dive focused discussion, and they can only do that when there's less items and they're not rushing through them. So I just want to clearly state for the record, my intent of suggesting shorter agendas isn't to lighten the load. It's actually to dive much, much deeper and be able to do that.
Yeah, and I would agree. I think we've actually tried to have, I think we've even done that this year. We've had less items and we've been able to dig deeper into them. So if you end up spending an hour on an item, great. Yep. Yeah.
Again, I'll start by saying I love staff as well. And I say that, Mr. Kern, because now that maybe staff could realize that when they come and do a report, we read the packet. We know what's in that packet. We read every item in that packet that maybe, instead of giving us such a detailed report, that they cover the things that are most important to us as well as the community. We probably don't need to know every detail on every page because that's our job. We should know that anyway. An exception to that is probably the budget report because it's that thick, but even the budget department summarizes it and does an incredible job by just giving us what is probably the most important that we need to know. So maybe it's you and your team that can discuss that as well, because that would help us and for what it's worth.
If I could offer an idea on that, I don't think it's in direct conflict with what you just said. I just want to express, I've really appreciated the lived experience parts of the presentations. And so I don't want to support anything that takes that away. So I just worry that the takeaway is like ditch everything. I appreciate, we have built, I think, a couple of fundamental building blocks of how we got here, what we're looking to do, and then the lived impact, and I've appreciated that.
Yeah, and that's something I think multiple board members have shared with us. We try and build more in that, whether it's, voices of parents, voices of students, voices of the staff at the school site, hearing directly from them rather than our district office staff, I think has been clear. It's made those presentations much more real.
Ms. Costa.
I would so agree with that. I think that's critical. And I think what Mr. Hernandez might have been talking about is sometimes when people get, when people get nervous, they read the PowerPoint presentation, and that probably isn't as useful to us as those shared experiences and the told experiences that they provide for us, which you can't capture in a PowerPoint. That comes from people's hearts and their experiences. So for that, I think that's crucial. I love your idea that the first board meeting is consent. I was a little worried about how we were going to approve staff and all of the things that have to happen in that first meeting, but that makes sense to me. And I think staff is really trying to get school up and running, and that's what's most critical at that point in time. And I like the idea of shorter agendas because I think, again, we can really do a deep dive into what's crucial for our kids. So
I'm just going to amplify I think one of the important things is that we have those occasions where we tell our story and we tell it anecdotally and that sort of thing and by the people and in a first person kind of way. And I think that if we don't do that, we've missed the point of why we're here. The other thing is that I think workshops also ought to be an exemption. I have enjoyed this workshop. I think there are topics that ought to have, and they would come earlier in the day, but they would truly be exceptions to the rule when we do those. But having this kind of opportunity to talk to each other about development, if you will, are good things to have, and we should not try to lose those. If there is nothing else, we do Mr. Allen.
Thank you for that. Moving us along, we will talk next about requesting agenda items. So I know each of you realize that as individuals, you are an individual member of our community, you are an individual board member, and it really is the collective will of the board that moves the board agenda, that moves the board forward into action. So in looking at how we will help provide structure for our newest members in having clarity around how board agenda items come to the agenda, how an item gets requested, looking for conversation there and what that would look like. Keeping in mind those things that are required by statute, that are business related, those will always come through from staff and the superintendent. But for those items where there's an interest from a board member, what should that process look like? What should the conversation look like to generate an agenda item that makes it to a board agenda?
So let me add a little bit more here too. I appreciate that, Trent. So if you guys, you guys are a very high functioning school board. And if you want to watch some that aren't, there's a Central Valley district that starts with the letter F. Watch some of their board meetings and what you'll, and this is throughout the state. And it's really kind of sad because what happens at times is one individual can disrupt the work of the entire board. So I started asking around to folks, okay, so what do you do? If an individual board member asks for something, and really as individual board members, you're unable to accomplish anything without the majority or the will of the entire board. So I was having a conversation with the superintendent in Elk Grove, and Chris said to me, he goes, well, we started a practice that has worked really well, and that is that if a board member has a desire for a future agenda item, they can say it. And then the board president says, is there a second? If there's a second, then it has to be that two other members of the board agree so that the majority of the board say, yeah, we're interested in this. He said what that's allowed us to avoid is if there are just two people who are lockstep and completely disagree with the rest of the board, those members of the board have the authority to really say, no, you're not going to dictate the work of the district or one individual, but it really has to be the majority of the board agreeing to that. So I started asking around when I was at the Urban Educator Dialogue as well, what do you guys do? Lots of similar thoughts around that. I think the other piece of that it helps us when we transition to 7 and when we have new board members come on board, they have to understand that they have to work with the other board members on issues to really accomplish things. So that's kind of the basis of where we wanted to go and just open that up for a conversation.
I like the idea of a majority vote for adding agenda items. I've been on both sides of that coin where I've requested an agenda item and it's made it on the agenda and it hasn't made it on the agenda. And I respect the fact it's up to the what's it was explained to me, I didn't know right away, but, it's up to the president and the superintendent. But I think that that's a really transparent process. So it's really clear that we all had an opportunity and we all shot it down or we all said no. And I think that will be very helpful moving forward with so many members because we're going to have a lot of different interests coming to the table.
Yeah, and I think it does, how it currently is, it puts probably undue pressure on the board president, but also potentially the superintendent in saying no when it might, and the reality is if the majority of the board wants something, then they're stating to the superintendent, the will of the board is to do this, and that's the responsibility. Then if the superintendent isn't listening and following, there's a whole nother issue you can deal with the superintendent.
Thank you for that. And we'll go to our final topic, which is a bit of an informational item, but also to get some thoughts and thinking in looking at meeting materials. So right now, that we customize that process that we have for how we generate our board packets and those meeting materials. It's very customized to San Juan, allows us to do lots of different things that fit our business processes in the district. Other districts use services that provide some additional features that do things that we can't do the way we do our board packets right now. So other places, their board packets are much more searchable on a historical basis. So going back to look for items historically is much easier than some other places. Indexing agenda items to pieces of recorded video from the meeting is automatically done in some platforms. So there's a lot of different features that come with some of these platforms. So staff have been looking at multiple platforms, what this might look like if we were to move to one of these platforms and away from a custom process that we run now. In looking at that and kind of pondering your needs as board members, we'd like to ask what kind of features or what types of needs would you have in that board packet preparation process and that product that gets delivered to you in being able to be prepared for meetings and have that information flowing to you.
So let me add one more piece that Trent was trying to be very kind. He kept saying platform, okay? We are one of the few districts that still is not in an online, using some form of online platform to provide really packets to the board. And that's what they've been looking at. And until we're able to go to some more, one of those other options, we will continue to be limited in what we can provide. Now, the challenge is it would be a huge learning curve for all of us, some more than others. I like my paper packet. I like my paper cabinet packet. But again, that's really where the conversation is. What tools could we use? How could it better support both staff, but even the community in what we present to the board?
I feel guilty every time I clean out my one packet with the next one and, I'm throwing away gobs of paper. My suggestion would be as we continue to do what's most efficient, I support that. But in the meantime, as we get our packet, all the addendum items, we get those digitally. We may probably need to have those printed in our packet. Does that make sense? If you as a board member, for me, if I feel I want to address one of the, the appendix, I can print it, the one page, and bring it to the board meeting, but I don't need all that stuff, is what I'm saying. I get it digitally, I look at it, I just need the meat of the agenda, and that would be fine for me, and I wouldn't feel so guilty throwing all that paper away twice a month. I don't know if that's possible, but it's something we need to think about, I think, because we throw away a lot of paper.
I think it would be good to at least start to transition, not just to an electronic version, but I can use my iPad for all of this. I use it because it gets printed out and delivered, which I'm very grateful for. But otherwise, I remember working for the legislature and putting together the equivalent. We thought the world was going to crumble when we didn't do paper packets, and it didn't. It's still going. It's fine. So it would be at least worth, I think, starting to transition, but perhaps making it optional. Like, if people still want their paper, they can request their paper.
I would want the electronic packet to be something where I can write notes like I do on the paper packet, so that as I see things, have questions, or want to make a comment about something, I can actually write onto the electronic packet those particular thoughts or questions. I'd like to be able to highlight so that I can go back and look at what was key to me, and I don't toss them out. And so sometimes I go back and look at something like a budget document. I'll go back and look, and I've highlighted it so I don't have to spend the same amount of time reading the whole thing. I can go back to the point that I was looking at. So those are my thoughts. That would be important to me. I like the searchable idea. It would be a lot easier than going through manila folders trying to find what I saved. I don't save every page. I save the things that I think are going to be critical that'll come back to us at some point in time. And so the searchable, I think, really would save us a lot of time. Those are just my thoughts. I'm totally in favor of the electronic version.
Ms. Costa said exactly what I was going to say. I think it's a great idea to transition. The functionality I personally would need is the ability to take notes on the page, sticky notes or something like sticky notes, and to be able to highlight and be able to get to those notes quickly. Like maybe that, I'm like thinking about Adobe, and like it creates a directory on the side so it could get you there really quick. With those things, I think it will be fine. And then we just need to talk about the technology. Are we all expected to bring our own laptops? Are we, what does that look like? But I think it's great to make the change. I will also say, though, we want to make sure that the board members have the tools that they need to do their job. And although I feel like I'd be comfortable with a change with a little time to learn it, just the option to get something printed or however they need the materials would be important, as for as long as it takes. Maybe not a truncated amount of time while we're training, but forever. Give them the tools that they need to do it.
Yeah, on that note, one of the things that Trent and I were talking about today is it might be one of those things where the business items, you could print up just the cover page and the presentations that would go along with it. That may be, for some folks, what they would want, because then you could write notes on that. But again, I think, first off, we're not talking about transitioning this until, like, it would be when we transition to a larger board. We have had staff looking at particular tools, including Stephanie and Nan and others from tech services. So I think, like, the thoughts that you're sharing about taking notes in those pieces, that's important for the team to hear, because they want to make sure whatever we provide to the board, it meets the needs of the board.
Other than requesting a 75-year-old male exemption to all of this, I think the idea, the appendices, I remember in one of the M&O kinds of things, there was one of the appendixes was from SCOE's rules on something. I think it was related to bonds and so forth, though I took great delight in finding typos in their item, that I think that it's the kind of thing that does not need to come to us, and so forth. But you're going to make me do this, huh? Okay, all right.
Well, I'm not your other four board members.
Mr. Allen.
Thank you for that. We are going to continue that exploration, and we will be inviting at least one, if not two, board members to help us explore some of those products before we make any final recommendations. And of course, that purchase agreement, should we go down that route, will of course come back to the board for your consideration. With that, I do want to thank you for the conversation today.
Before we wrap up, sorry, Trent, I'm worried folks are going to run away. I did have something for the questions and board discussion slide
Yes.
piece before we walk away. And that was just quickly, I wanted to just point out the one thing that I think wasn't on here, and I'm not quite sure how to tackle it. But when we originally set off to transition the board, or started the discussions around transitioning and expanding the board, when I look at some of the biggest challenges for both by districts and larger boards, it's when it comes to budgets. And it comes to, I think of examples where a trustee is saying, well, I want this for my high school, or I want this for my school. And so I just want to point that out. Whatever we have to build into our budget documents and our principal foundation documents, et cetera, that points out that we will continue to govern as a full district, and that the district's success of schools in Miss Creason's are just as important to me as the one in mine. I think that's absolutely critical to move forward and set as a norm moving forward. So it wasn't a slide here, but I wanted to point that out because I think that's some of the biggest potential challenges, both expanding and moving to by districts.
Thoughts, other board members agree? So what I think we could take a shot at, Trent, is something, I like the idea of a statement, maybe even our budget book, Jennifer, how we have kind of the core statements, adding another one to that, but also clearly defining that in kind of the handbook with the goals and objectives. So I appreciate you bringing that up, and we'll take a shot at that.
Thank you.
No, just thank you again for the conversation. As Ms. Viesca said, this is going to be a transition where we do need to really look at how we want to move forward and build our culture into our processes. So appreciate all the conversation and ideas you've generated today. We again will be coming back to you with some ideas on how we can encapsulate your thinking into some of our actual documents. So as we roll through in actually building process and protocol, those things are there and captured for the future. So again, thank you.
Okay, I declare the workshop closed. We will now be going into closed session. I call the meeting of the San Juan Unified School District Board of Education back to order. There is one closed session item on tonight's agenda: collective bargaining matters, discussion of with negotiator Daniel Thigpen, Senior Director of Labor Relations, regarding CSEA Chapter 127, General Operations Support, and also chauffeurs / Teamsters, Local 150 Transportation Supervisors and Teachers, and certificated supervisory units, and regarding the non-represented groups, management and confidential units subject to Government Code Section 54957.6. And we do not have any speaker cards for the closed session items. We will now move into closed session, and we will return to open session at 6:30. I call the meeting of the San Juan Unified District Board of Education back to order. The meeting is being audio and video recorded, and the recording may capture sounds and images of those attending this meeting. The recording will be posted on the district website. Board meetings are being held in person in the boardroom at the district office, and the public is welcome to attend. Alternatively, the meeting may be viewed on the district's YouTube channel, where it is being live streamed. Please stand for the presentation of the colors by the Del Campo High School Air Force ROTC. Good evening and welcome. I am Michael McKibben, Board President. To my right is Ms. Zima Creason, Board Vice President. To her right is Ms. Pam Costa, Board Clerk, and to her right is Mr. Saul Hernandez and Ms. Paula Villasquez, Board Members. To my left is Superintendent Ken Kern, and to his left is Board Administrative Assistant Stephanie Cunningham. Individuals who are attending the meeting in person and would like to offer public comment we ask that you complete a speaker request card available at the staff table, and you will be called on at the appropriate time during the agenda. Please note that by Board Bylaw 9323, which limits visitor comments to 2 minutes per speaker and with no more than 30 minutes per single topic. Time will be extended for any speaker who uses an interpreter. Please be aware that public comments, including your name, become part of the public record. We now move to item E, approval of minutes. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes for March 22nd?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Villasquez and seconded by
Second.
Ms. Creason. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That was unanimous. We are now at item F1, High School Student Council reports. Tonight, we will hear from student representatives from Del Campo High School and Mesa Verde High School. Welcome, and let's begin with Kristen Cabral and Adela Todd from Del Campo.
Good evening, President McKibben, members of the board, Superintendent Kern, and Ms. Cunningham. I'm Adela Todd, Del Campo's ASB Vice President.
And I'm Christian Cabral, Del Campo's ASB President.
We are glad to be representing Del Campo High School tonight. Thank you for inviting us again to speak about the many events taking place on campus.
As of right now, we are in the middle of our spring sports. Swim is wrapping up their season with senior night that happened tonight and will have many of their players advance into sections. Boys tennis, boys volleyball, baseball, softball, and track are also going strong right now and have about a month left of their seasons. Students have been ecstatic supporting at events, providing a school spirit that we have not seen since the pandemic initially hit.
Moving on to school culture. Currently, more than 300 students have been actively involved within the production of our 55th Sportsorama event that takes place this Friday. Students, along with staff, are excited to relive the event after a 2-year-long halt. There's a wide range of student involvement ranging from teaching the skit and stomp to performing as athletes to artistically producing our unique bleacher posters to digital designers that have helped the marketing of the event. After Sportsorama and spring break, the excitement of the upperclassmen will continue into the much anticipated return of junior prom and senior ball. The student government class saw the advantages of having a COVID-friendly dance and enjoyed the different opportunities that an outside dance provides. Juniors will be hosting their prom at Northridge Country Club, and the seniors will be at Bartley Kavanaugh Golf Course.
With the school year wrapping up, we have plans for new courses for the 2022 and 2023 school year. To start, there will be a new math class that will allow students to get 6 college credits. Students will take the class after completing their IM3 course and will take the CLEP exam after the honors course. Another class that is underway is College and Career Readiness, ran by English teacher Ms. Shaw. The class is designed to aid students in making and achieving their post-secondary college and career goals. Emphasis will be placed on research and exploration while building digital literacy, critical thinking, and college-level writing skills. Primary project domains over the course of the year will include marketing yourself, networking, creating resumes, completing job applications, producing college-level writing, writing effective cover letters, and reading content related to the philosophies of the class. Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to speak and represent Del Campo tonight.
Thank you. Thank you. And do any board members have any questions or comments? Ms. Creason.
just want, excuse me, thank you for the report. I always love hearing from you. Thank you for mentioning your dual enrollment program, the program where the high school students are receiving college credit, for folks that may not be familiar with that term. I know that there's a lot of investment at the statewide level to expand dual enrollment, both for K through 12 as well as adult education. So thank you for sharing that. It's an incredible opportunity, and it really does enhance pathway programs for young folks to get good jobs when they leave our doors. Also just thankful for hearing the great stories about all the activities that you guys get to do. And it's so refreshing to hear out of the last 2 years that the seniors are going to get the year that they deserve. Because it was absolutely heartbreaking. Understandable, pandemics are hard. I've said it many times, but it was heartbreaking to hear, you guys go through so much and then not get all the, celebration that you deserve. And so I'm so glad that that's picking back up and you're going to get that this year. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we hear from Courtney Andres and Jordan Saltonstall of Mesa Verde. And correct my pronunciation, Courtney.
Good evening, President McKibben, members of the board, Superintendent Kern, and Ms. Cunningham. I am Courtney Andres.
And I'm Jordan Saltonstall from Mesa Verde High School.
A lot has changed since we last presented, and we are thrilled that we are pretty much back to normal. After we last spoke to you, we had an outdoor homecoming dance in the quad with a food truck and a really fun holiday door decorating contest where the winning class earned a pizza party. We had a very successful canned food drive where we were able to provide 15 Mesa Verde families with gigantic boxes of non-perishable food items. We were able to work our main fundraiser, the basketball snack bar, for a few games, but due to the Omicron variant surge, we could not finish the season.
In February, we had a Valentine's Day fundraiser to raise money for school events. We set up a booth for students to purchase items for their friends and significant others. They were able to choose between stuffed animals, cards, and balloons, and we delivered the gifts to students in their second period classes. The whole campus was excited to celebrate this day with their loved ones.
On St. Patrick's Day, leprechauns were spotted engaging in shenanigans in the D Hall, leaving 4-leaf clovers and various Lucky Charms for every student and staff member. Many students and staff wore green, so we are happy to report there were low incidents of pinching.
Our spring musical, Lil Abner, was a huge success. Lil Abner is a production about a young gal named Daisy who was hankering to catch herself Lil Abner during the annual Sadie Hawkins Day race. The government needs a place to detonate their atom bombs, so they deem Dogpatch the most unnecessary place of all. This declaration definitely gets in the way of the race. Hijinks ensue. The students worked hard to put this show together, and it was a good old knee-slapping time. Only 2 of our San Juan Unified High Schools have pulled up their bootstraps and produced a musical. Go Mesa. The Optimist Club has been a generous contributor to Mesa Verde High School. In total, they've given us $22,000 to support athletics and activities. Activities was granted $6,000 to our junior and senior prom on April 30th at the Mission Oaks Community Center. If it wasn't for the help of the Optimist Club, we would have really struggled financially to host prom as our students deserve. They granted athletics $16,000 to go towards new uniforms, supplies, and help replenish everything that was lost due to COVID. We are very grateful for their generosity.
Finally, after 2 years, we're planning our first rally to send off our beloved seniors. At the rally, we're planning on showcasing our seniors and their greatest accomplishments. We will honor them with a slideshow and end the rally with all grades moving to their new class seat locations for next year. After that, everyone will immediately report to the quad and lawn area for our day on the green, where different clubs will set up carnival-type games, and we will all celebrate the end of another school year. On behalf of Mesa Verde High School, we would like to thank the members of the board for allowing us the time this evening.
Are there any comments or questions from the board? Ms. Fiascas.
I just want to thank both of our student groups for joining us and letting us hear all of the wonderful things, particularly as the spring semester kind of starts to wrap up. It's wonderful to see you and hear about the fantastic things going on campus. You mentioned the senior recognition, but if you said the time and date, I missed it. Can you repeat it, please? If you have it, you might not have it.
We don't have a date yet.
Oh, okay, no worries. Whenever you do, I'll keep an eye out for it. Not sure I can make it out that way, but would love to try. Just in general, I think this spring in particular, it's a wonderful celebration of our seniors. So Sounds like you might have something to add. Go for it.
It's on May 22nd.
Okay.
27th. 7.
May 27th. Got it. You've got some excellent helpers. Thank you.
Others? Okay. We would like to thank you for your reports and for being here tonight. Student voice is very important to the board. You are welcome to stay for the remainder of the meeting, but we realize that you have homework and lives. So if you need to attend to that, this is a good time to return to the other things that need your attention. Thank you very much. There are no staff reports, so we will move to F3, Board-Appointed District Committees. Tonight, we will hear from the Chair of the Curriculum and Standards Committee, Ms. Mael Jenkins. Welcome, Mael.
Good evening. And good evening, President McKibben, members of the board, Superintendent Kern, and Ms. Cunningham. My name is Mael Jenkins, and I'm here tonight in honor of the Curriculum and Standards Committee. I'm representing as the chair of the committee this evening. So we wanted to share that the committee met on March 16th and reviewed 2 items which will be before you on this agenda this evening as items J. The 2 items were the new high school courses for 2022-2023, and the second item was the instruction materials adoptions. Each was presented by San Juan Unified staff, and after thoughtful discussion by the committee unanimously decided to move both the new high school courses and instructional materials adoptions forward to the board, which you will discuss this evening. With that, I want to thank you, members of the board, for your time. I want to thank President McKibben as well as Superintendent Kern. And President McKibben, I turn it back to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Do any board members have questions or comments? Ms. Costa.
I'd just like to thank Ms. Jenkins for her outstanding and professional job chairing the Curriculum and Standards Committee. As the board liaison, it is just always a pleasure to be at those meetings and to listen to the discussion. The discussion was rich, and I learned so much every time I go to the meetings, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Trustee Costa.
Anybody else? Okay. Thank you very much for your report. We are now at items F4 through F6. There are no reports from employee organizations or other district organizations, and there are no closed session actions to report. We now move to visitor comments, item G. We do have visitor comments to come today, and the first one is from Deborah Woolley.
Hi, Honorable Board. I'm going to serve you with a letter this evening.
You'll give them to the administrative assistant.
Hi, I'm Deborah Woolley. I was here last month to let you know that it's my belief that believing lies is detrimental to my mental health and yours and our students. I'm here tonight to serve you a letter to let you know that you're officially being served the attached declaration from the World Council for Health and 35 pages of exhibits regarding the promotion and mandating of COVID shots in California and worldwide. There is now more than enough evidence to warn and declare these experimental injections are unsafe for use in humans. As of February 18th, 2022, in the United States alone, the VAERS database showed 24,000 reported deaths since January 2021 and over 1 million vaccine injuries. It breaks my heart. On behalf of all California citizens who have been actively opposing these practices of mandates and guidelines,
Thank you very much. We now move to the consent calendar, which is item H. Do any board members wish to remove any items from the consent calendar? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve items H1 through H7?
So moved.
So moved by Ms. Viescas, seconded by Mr. Hernandez. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That is unanimous. We now move to the business items. The first item is item J1, instructional materials adoptions. Ms. Schnapp.
Good evening, Dr. McKibben, members of the board, Superintendent Kern, and Ms. Cunningham. Tonight, the superintendent is recommending the board discuss Report 2s related to new instructional materials. It is essential that teachers and students have access to current and aligned materials. Tonight, the PLI team will walk you through the adoption process. With me is Nicole Kukral, our Director for Professional Learning and Instruction, and Program Specialists Paula Baucom and Nicole Naditz.
Good evening. We're pleased to bring forward our instructional materials recommendations for this evening for your consideration. Am I using this incorrectly? How do I make it? Okay. There we go. Okay, thank you. Our purpose this evening is to ensure that we have engaged in a thoughtful process and also to share critical information with all of you about our instructional materials adoptions. We have several materials adoptions to bring forward to you tonight for your consideration. On this slide, you'll notice that some of our adoptions are marked with either 1 asterisk or 2. The 1 asterisk designation denotes that these are adoptions that went through our small adoption process, which I'll be sharing more details about in a moment. And then the 2 asterisk adoption is our physics adoption, which we will bring to you as a recommendation in spring of 2023. And Paula Baucom will be giving you more detail on that in a few moments. The small adoption process that are denoted on the slides with 1 asterisk are adoptions that don't engage in the 2-cycle pilot process because there are typically limited options for materials or they're offered in a very small scope across our district. And at this time, I'm going to invite Paula Baucom, our Program Specialist for Science and Health, to share with you the details of our selection process. Paula?
For all of the science, health, and Spanish courses that we are sharing with you today, we use the instructional materials selection criteria that is used for adoptions in California. The 7 areas you see on this slide are bulleted with additional details in the rubrics that you'll find in the attachment Bs for each of the Report 2s. While there are some differences across all of the criteria areas, the biggest differences you'll see are in the first section that is alignment to the content standards. We have included an additional slide to describe the evaluation rubrics that were used in the next generation science courses. biology, living earth, and chemistry in the earth system. The state developed a toolkit, it's abbreviated as TIME, that includes an evaluation rubric for a shorter initial pre-screening process that specifically focuses on alignment to the next generation science standards. You'll see this in the attachment B documents for both the report 2s for biology, living earth, and chemistry in the earth system. This was followed by a more in-depth paper screening process that was used to more thoroughly evaluate the materials as the teachers engaged in the pilot process. It looked at both the alignment to NGSS and also an integration of the other key areas you saw on the former slide. You can view the modified version of the TIME paper screening rubric as attachment C for each of the reports. For all of the courses that went through the full pilot process, we started off by actively recruiting a wide diversity of teachers from each of our school sites to be a part of the adoption committees. Each committee first pre-screened the available materials and then narrowed down to the best options to pilot in classrooms. Teachers then piloted 2 sets of materials in their classrooms, with the exception of the Spanish courses, who piloted 3 sets of instructional materials. All of the piloting cycles occurred during the fall semester and included the opportunity for both students and the community to share their input. The process wrapped up when each of the adoption committees met to analyze the evidence collected and then used a consensus process to recommend materials for adoption. You can view the recommendations in each of the report 2s for each of the courses. So you may have noticed, and as Nicole indicated earlier, that we are not bringing you a recommendation for one of our NGSS core courses, the Physics of the Universe course. As we completed our pilot process and met for the final meeting in January, our pilot teachers were unable to support the adoption of either program and also agreed to postpone the adoption process and start again later this spring. Our next steps will be largely based on teacher input and collaboration. The committee has interest in looking at more outside the box options, which could include open source materials, possibly a custom print material based on separate physics and earth science materials. And they will pre-screen different options starting this spring, and then continue to use our NGSS rubric to ensure that the materials are aligned to the standards, and support teachers as we review to determine new options to pilot this next fall, with the goal of recommending new instructional materials for Physics of the Universe by this time next year. A critical component within the NGSS science courses are the opportunity for students to engage in hands-on exploration in labs. These hands-on science experiences are a core part of both the recommended materials for biology, living earth, and the chemistry in the earth systems courses. As a result, we have allocated funds for teachers to purchase needed materials, both during the first year of the adoption, along with ongoing funds for consumable materials throughout the life of the adoption. And I'm going to pass this over to Nicole Naditz, who's going to share next steps.
Thank you, Paula. Continuing with the budget for these programs, as you can see on this slide, we have broken out the cost for the materials for each program, leading to a total materials cost of $1.75 million across the science, health, and Spanish adoptions. For 3 of the programs that are recommended for adoption, consistent access to technology is necessary. For example, with the materials for biology of the living earth and chemistry in the earth system, as one way of engaging in inquiry into scientific phenomena, learners will need access to virtual simulations and labs that are only available in the online platforms. Similarly, in the Spanish materials, without consistent access to technology in class, learners are unable to practice or use the assessment materials for their interpretive listening or interpersonal and presentational speaking standards, because the practice activities and assessments for those standards are only available in the online platform. We have broken out the costs of Chrome carts for these classrooms for a total cost of $1.3 million. In order to support successful implementation of our new materials, professional learning sessions focused on the new materials and platforms will be scheduled during the summer and early fall. Teachers will have the opportunity to receive training from the publishers, as well as time for planning and collaboration with colleagues across the district. This opportunity for collaboration is intentionally provided so that teachers can develop supplemental resources and additional scaffolds that the piloting committees identified as being helpful for instruction based on their experiences with the recommended programs during the pilots. For 2 of the programs we are recommending for adoption, the publishers do not include that initial professional learning in their materials costs. We have broken out the costs of those initial publisher-provided implementation trainings for these programs for you with a total professional learning cost of $9,700. So with everything, these are the total costs for all of the recommended adoptions. And as you can see, the grand total is $3.2 million. At this time, President McKibben, we are happy to entertain any questions the board may have.
Thank you very much for the report. Do any board members have any questions? I'm sorry. Thank you. We need to do visitor comments first. I apologize. I'd like to recognize Jennifer Morgan of the committee.
I'm submitting this comment as a footnote to the CNS presentation regarding the materials adoption, specifically for the biology curriculum adoption. Quite a number of committee members were concerned about the limitations listed by the adoption committee. They are relevant concerns considering the cost for these materials and being stuck with them for 7 years. When these concerns were brought up in response to the presentation, district staff informed our committee that our sole purpose is to verify only that the process was followed and that we weren't supposed to question the information presented to us. The votes reflect this distinction, not our concerns for the material. It's confusing that an advisory committee to the school board made up of citizen volunteers merely exists to check boxes on a regulation list. There are countless individuals in this organization that are doing the work and walking the walk. To let district staff insist that people know their place, a common regional reflex around here, all too easily devastates any gains made by their peers around them. It's imperative that the administration here recognize that they do not have the luxury to face their institutional issues one at a time. Lip service alone is not enough. The book clubs are not enough. I invite this board and this administration to revisit the purpose of these advisory committees so that we make the best efforts to not continue to waste the time of the folks participating in them. My colleagues and I are donating our time, energy, and intellectual capital to better the education system as a whole. It is not yours to waste. Additionally, I would like to publicly thank Paula Balcom not only for her commitment to ensuring the full district-wide adoption of NGSS across all grade levels for these last several years, but also for personally showing up at our elementary school to work as a substitute during the post-holiday staffing crisis of January 2022. Her dedication and support for the children in this community is evident, and she deserves to be commended for it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Now, board questions and comments. Are there any ones that have any? Ms. Costa. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Villasquez.
Sure. Just initially, you discussed a little bit about the physics component of this, and it's noted here, and you covered it as well, that that's been kind of pushed back. Can you share a little bit about the curriculum that's being used now, and I assume the plan is to keep using that in the meantime?
There it is.
The materials that we're using the Hewitt's conceptual physics book. It's a physics book that is quite dated, and there's not an updated copy for future use. One of the biggest challenges with using those materials moving forward is that teachers are having to supplement the earth and space science standards that are part of our new 3-course model. So teachers are going kind of looking for open source materials and additional resources to make the course aligned to the standards. That being said, our plan is to work with next steps to review additional materials, possibly open source materials, outside the box kind of approaches. We're going to work with them this spring, and then they will have the opportunity to try the lessons out, pilot materials for this next school year.
Great, thank you. And I know in the past, there's often through a review process limitations that are noted. That is part of the process. I want to offer the opportunity to respond a little bit to particularly the limitations on the biology side and how we might be planning to supplement that or address those concerns.
One thing that we did specifically was we've been working with the STEM Scopes academic specialists, specifically around some of the limitations with the Biology Living Earth curriculum. And we are committed to carefully, analyzing those limitations and building in scaffolds and supports for teachers to be able to effectively meet all the needs for our wide diversity of students in the district. Part of the challenge, I think, with some of the limitations is that the larger scope of the instructional shifts within the next generation science standard. So it's more than just having a textbook like we have had in the past, and it's really about having a robust set of instructional materials. So a lot of those instructional materials components are based on the 5E model, which brings in engagement, exploration, explaining, elaborating, and evaluating is this model. So we will be specifically working with teachers to support those instructional shifts using these new materials. So we're very committed to supporting this process, providing robust professional learning. And one thing that we did just yesterday is we brought our Biology Living Earth Committee back together with the academic specialists from STEM Scopes to specifically address those limitations that were brought up. And in fact, I just shared out those additional resources and supports when we followed up for any members that were not able to attend yesterday afternoon.
Great, thank you for answering both of those questions. And then my last piece is just a comment. We actually spent a good part of a workshop just talking about the roles that the committees play and how much we value their input. So I just want to publicly state we're always looking for ways to do things better, and we all appreciate your time and recognize there's room there. So know that we're evaluating that as well. Thank you to the team for the thorough process here, and that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Ms. Costa.
Knowing how comprehensive the adoption process is and how much teacher time is spent in this process and the collection of evidence, I think this in particular, this report was a perfect example of how well the process works. One adoption, the committee voted not to move forward with. The other adoptions, the committee voted yes, indeed, to go forward. And I think when you look at professionals who are in the classroom working with the materials, that the amount of time they spend, the amount of after-school hours they spend meeting with you and collecting evidence and having discussions, I feel really positive about the work. I really was pleased to hear how you're addressing the limitations that were identified. I know that's always been your process, so I know that's not anything new for this report. It's true for everything that you've done along the way. So my thanks to the teachers who served on all of these committees and to you as the leaders who have helped us to move forward. So thank you.
Ms. Greason.
Thank you so much for the report. It's always exciting when we're updating our materials. I always love this part. So number one, I want to say I really appreciate the willingness to kick back what didn't work. I know that I know that must be a really devastating feeling. I can only imagine that feeling. But I mean, it takes bravery, and it's doing the right thing for kids. If these options don't work, we're going to start over. And yes, it's going to be a whole long road, but it's worth it. So I appreciate that very, very much. I very much appreciate the work of CNS, of course, the staff team, all the teachers that do this work, but we have a bunch of, with all due respect, and I appreciate you very much, you also get paid. And, and so the families that are in the stakeholders or the community, I need to stop saying stakeholders, that come to the table to help with this work, so tremendously valuable. And there's a level of lived experience that makes you an expert in many, many, many ways. And I don't want that discounted. So I appreciate that. As my colleague just said, we just had a workshop and we just talked about committees and their roles. And I will say it was my understanding, and I understand that I need to reread some bylaws and get a better understanding of the role of committees, because I did think the role of the committee was really to advise the board, and that this committee wasn't specific on process. This is the first time I remember ever hearing that. So I would like further clarity just of the role of the committee. I've sat up here many, many times and have shared how much I rely on committee input. I think that's why there is an addition to the cover page that notes when things go to committee and what the action was, because I kept bringing it up. Well, what did the committee say? Because I can't do all those and this. So I think my takeaway is I also heard, that the committee did approve, but I hear that there was more discussion and maybe there's confusion about the roles. But I'm glad that this came up earlier during the workshop, because I think there is going to be a lot of value in really laying out and maybe redefining possibly what are the roles of committees and bringing further understanding to all of us, including me, because apparently I had it wrong, moving forward.
Excuse me. No, I'm fine. On slide 8 related to physics, I do think that this is an example that the system does work because you took it back. Will the same group continue to work on it, or will you start fresh on this one?
So what we did is, after we made after the committee made the recommendation to postpone and move forward for the next year, we actually reached out to every physics of the universe current teacher in our district and offered them the opportunity. Would you like to be a part? Would you like to join the committee? And so we put that out there. I literally, like every single teacher that teaches the course. And then we also let the committee know, if you have been a member and you no longer wish to participate, please let us know as well. So we are making sure to do our due diligence to make sure that we personally invite anyone who wants to join. And as we go into the start of the next year, we'll reach out again if we hire new physics of the universe teachers to loop them into the process if they'd wish to be a part.
Thank you. In terms of, I see you talked about the greater use of technology, and I said, and this is the most I think I've seen in the time that I've been around this stuff. Do you see this as a trend coming that in all adoptions there will be much more technology?
Yes, we do. As we've been working with a variety of vendors, we have noticed that many of them have really shifted to creating much more robust digital resources on their platform, so they feel less supplemental. They used to feel very supplemental and kind of additional, and now they really have turned into an integral part of the program. And the biology recommendation is a perfect example of that. Really, the materials cannot exist separately. They have to go together. So yeah, we definitely see that as a trend kind of in the industry right now.
Okay. My next question relates to slide 10 and the professional development issues and so forth. There's always been professional development, but it always appeared that it was kind of by the textbook manufacturers and pretty much at the start. In this several $1 million of that, is that spread out during the life of the adoption, or is that all front-loaded in terms of professional development?
The publishers offer kind of an initial launch for us, but we always plan with our adoptions to continue support for all of our practitioners. So Paula and Nicole and their teams will be not only supporting that kind of initial work from the publisher, just kind of how do you work the digital platform, how is the book organized, but they'll be bringing practitioners together into learning communities where the practitioners can plan together, as Nicole mentioned, develop scaffolds and supports and additional resources that might be helpful in the classroom. So we always provide ongoing support as well, but we do that more from our team rather than the publishers themselves.
And is that included in that dollar figure, or is that in addition to that dollar figure?
There's no cost for the professional learning services when our team facilitates it, obviously, and then there would be some costs in terms of time cards
Right.
and things like that on an ongoing basis if we're paying people to
And
attend
staff
after
time and
school.
things like
Yeah, exactly.
Next question related to the limitations that were mentioned on page 12. And you talked about connections to the Sacramento Area Science Project as well as the supplemental resources leading toward the NGSS and so forth. How, as a team, as a system, do we recognize those limitations and try to backfill for them?
Well, and are you specifically talking about all the limitations for all the
I'm
courses?
just
or
talking
about
the ones that were mentioned under the limitations related to page 12, and they specifically talked about the limitations related to supplemental resources connected to the NGSS. And it was noted by the team as a limitation. I was wondering how you, whether you recognize that limitation and what do you do to fix it?
Well, I know specifically around supplemental, support for our teachers. We partner with the publisher. We, like you've mentioned, Sacramento Area Science Project. I know that was one of the things that was noted as a strength because that's the philosophy. Sacramento Area Science Project is our local science project group out of CSUS, and so we partner with them and provide additional support.
That would be an example of the trying to.
Exactly. And so we really look at customizing the needs for the teachers in our district and students, the needs for our students. So we initially start with the publishers, but then working with our teachers on special assignment on our teams, we work to provide those additional supports that teachers would need. But we also tap into all of our resources locally, like the Sacramento Area Science Project, Science in the River City. They have different supports for professional learning and teachers.
And one last one. I noticed on all of the rest of the adoptions, there was an expected delivery date, but on environmental science on page 37, there wasn't an expected delivery date on that one. Does that mean that it's going to be later, or that was just an oversight in the printing of the piece?
For the delivery of the materials?
Each one of them had an expected delivery date, but environmental science didn't have. And I was trying to figure out whether that was an omission or whether that was.
I think it was
going to
just
be
an
delayed.
oversight, yeah, because
Okay.
it should line up with the others.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for this report. This is a discussion item and will return to the board on April 19th. Is that correct? Okay, looking forward to seeing it. All right, we will now move to the I-2, the new high school courses.
Good evening again. The superintendent is recommending the board discuss new proposed high school courses. These courses are designed to ensure student choice. They're also aligned to the new grad requirements. Over the last 4 years, as you know, we've brought you many courses for approval from the board. Tonight, we'll be bringing 3 additional courses to meet the needs of some of our more specific pathways. So at this time, I will invite Nicole Kukral to discuss those courses.
Thank you. We're also excited to bring forward our new high school courses for 22-23. This is always fun to share some upcoming options for our students. Whenever we recommend new courses for approval, we do engage in a process that begins with some sort of initiator, whether that's at the site level or whether that's district initiated. Tonight's courses provide you examples of both. And then we send that course through layers of review so that we can ensure that all of our necessary groups are able to get eyes on the course and provide feedback at all stages of the process. And of course, that layer of approval process culminates in a recommendation to our Curriculum and Standards Committee, and then of course to all of you. Our goals for new courses are always to ensure that we're providing a rich, robust educational program for our students that tap into their needs and interests, and that also provide them A through G credit so that they can apply for admission to CSU and UC systems. This evening, we have 3 courses that we're recommending for approval. The first is an environmental science course in our sciences, and that was initiated by the district based on needs that we had heard from schools, and also the need to recommend a third-year flexible science option for our students to add to their science repertoire as they're meeting the graduation requirements. We also have a course in the visual and performing arts, that's mural design. It was initiated at Encina High School. And then we have the college prep elective, which you heard about this evening from our students, the college and career readiness course at Del Campo, which was in a pilot year this year, but they put it forward for full approval this year as well. So we're really excited to share those with you. And at this time, we will take any questions that you have.
No. Okay, we'll move directly to board questions and comments. Are there any? No? Okay. And it appears there are no comments and so forth. So therefore, this is a discussion item. It will also return on April 19th for action. Thank you very much for this report. Appreciate it. We move now to, where am I? To I3, or J3, I'm sorry. Proposed board meeting dates, 22, 23. And is that yours?
Sure. So board, you can see the proposed dates for the upcoming year. We continue to utilize the regular schedule of the second and the fourth Tuesday. There are some variations to that. You'll notice in November, so that we don't conflict with the election date this year. Otherwise, those are consistent. We do only have one meeting in December, as we usually do, and we can take any comments or questions related to this as well. And this is an action item.
And there are no speakers. Are there any questions or comments from the board?
I'm just
Vasquez.
excited and hopeful that all of these meeting dates will be in person and under relatively normal times. I feel like we should put some sage over the paper or something, but I'm good with it.
Okay, any other questions or comments? This is an action
Happy to move the
item.
item.
All right, the item has been moved by Ms. Vasquez, seconded by Ms. Greason. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed, that was unanimous. We now move to board reports. Are there any board reports from board members? Ms. Vasquez.
Yes, I've got a couple of items. I will make it quick. I want to congratulate the Miraloma speech and debate team. I believe they are headed to national competitions after successfully winning district championships here over this last week, as well as Bella Vista winning their moot court championship here in Sacramento County as well. And we'll just note that I saw a really lovely photo of the team with one of my favorite justices that I've been able to work with, Justice Vance Ray. So very excited about that. Want to acknowledge that one of our classified employees of the year has been nominated and moved on to Sac County Classified Employees of the Year, Natalia Aguiar, I believe.
We actually have
Oh,
three.
we have 3. Oh, thank you. I welcome assistance on acknowledging the other 2 if you happen to have them. But if not, congratulations to all, because there's only 6 total, so we make up half. Go team, that's awesome. And I had the pleasure of attending along with my colleagues our San Juan Teacher of the Year recognition event here in the boardroom last week. I struggle to know what day of the week it is these days. But it was a wonderful opportunity to recognize the hard work of our team here in person, to see everybody, say thank you, to gather again as a family. So I enjoyed that. And I also this weekend had the pleasure of attending the National School Board Association conference, which was here in San Diego. And I presented along with President of the Washington Unified School District, Jackie Wong, around the nexus of child welfare systems and child welfare involved students and schools and how to better serve our foster youth in particular. Finally, I just want to acknowledge that it's been a very violent week here in our community, both here and in the city as well, and just want to kind of acknowledge that and say that my heart is with all the victims of the last couple of days. That's all for me.
Ms. Greason.
I just want to share that I was able to visit La Vista Center and did an art project with some of the students over there. So that was cool. They're doing a poster project. Long story, it's going up all on all their windows. I think they have all the talent, and I was just kind of there, but it was wonderful to be with them that day. Had the opportunity to join the You Light the Way event. That's the wonderful, wonderful event that is hosted by our CAC Special Education Committee to honor individuals that do so much for students and families receiving special education services. It was online. It was very well done. There was a lot of little vignette videos. It was great. Want to acknowledge Cesar Chavez Day. I know that we do not take that day as a holiday in the district, but it is a big deal. Mr. Chavez did a whole lot for the immigrant community and for civil rights, so I want to acknowledge him and his legacy, so it's definitely worth a Google if you're not familiar with him. I'm really excited to announce that I'm going to be visiting the baby goats tomorrow at Casa. Been really, really hoping that they didn't grow out of being baby goats before I got over there, but I will be there tomorrow. I wanted to share that next CAC meeting will be in person on April 20th, and that will be the first time that that group has been in person in quite some time. So, and then also to echo my colleagues' comments, I asked President McKibben if we could adjourn in remembrance of the many, many lives lost this weekend in downtown.
Okay, and I just wanted to, wanted to mention that it was a week ago Saturday now, I attended the FACE virtual conference. There were 180 members there. 40 of the participants were there with the 6 translators that were there, and that was very impressive to watch. And they had breakout sessions and so forth, and it was a very impressive conference. And I hope that it becomes more an annual event. It was really very good. Also went to Oakview Elementary School last week, and I want to thank Ms. Shana Waters, for hosting me and taking me around to classes. Wanted to particularly note one class that I was in was a first-second combination, and they were doing grouping in mathematics and doing things that first and second graders should not be able to do, but they were doing it in a way that was very, very impressive. Also wanted to say there were, I believe 4 board members at the Teacher of the Year celebration, and it was great to see those people, and hopefully they'll fill out all their paperwork and so forth and move on with that and so forth. So with that, we move to future, unless there's anybody else, future agenda items. Item L, are there any board members who wish to add items to the future agenda? Seeing none.
Dr. McKibben, just real quick, I got the names of the other folks of our classified just so we can recognize them tonight. It was Natalie Aguirre from FACE, John Weathers from Custodial Services, and Aaron Perini from Tech Services. So those were our 3 recipients at the county level.
Okay, very good. Okay, and there are no visitor comments at this time. Therefore, I deem this meeting adjourned.